Hi, this is Maya from the Worldwide Good News, and I have a very special guest today. I have Freeman Michaels. He is an amazing coach. He has this wonderful YouTube channel called Changing Times Media, which is all about our potential, our possibilities, our changing shift in humanity, and it's really, really exciting. Hi, Freeman, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Great.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love your channel. I love your work, and I'm really thrilled to be able to participate in this.
Thank you. I mean, definitely the same here. I've watched your channel and been on your channel, and it's really exciting. And it's so great to see that all of us as a big tribe, we're all going out there in our own way, really trying to raise our awareness of what's happening around the world. And you're definitely one of the champions.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because this is, in my mind, a moment in time where people have a voice in a way that they didn't have before. And so that's very powerful because the individual, at the level of individual, which is a big distinction, by the way, that I make personally in all the work that I do, is that it's not a waiting for a collective. It's contributing in a very constructive way from our own experience, which then invites other people to do the same. And what we find is that many of us are upping our game, are sort of meeting at a place where our ideas are stretching our imagination of what's possible. That's what's exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. It's just such a great time to live. I mean, yes, there's a lot of bad things, but because we're coming together, there's a lot of possibilities for changing it. People are waking up saying, what can I do?
I don't know how you're feeling today, but I'm feeling this real heaviness. I don't know when this will air, but just in terms of when we're taping it, last night we got news that Osama bin Laden had been killed. And it's interesting because what we're seeing right now is extremes. We are having this incredible conversation with this beautiful possibility, and there's so many people really celebrating what is wonderful and what our potential is as human beings on one hand, and on the other hand, we have this old paradigm, which is still sort of screaming at us. And it's an interesting moment in time on so many levels. I feel, this is my opinion, I feel as if the volume has been turned up. It's like we've amped up the sort of extremes. And it feels like personally, and again, I personalize everything, like it's a test. I really feel like, wow, I come to this interview today feeling a sense of heaviness, a sense of sadness at the I'll be very blunt. I saw the celebrations last night, and I found it sort of despicable. Not a judgment of whether or not the action was right or wrong. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way people externalized it. They didn't internalize it. They immediately went to I felt like someone won the Super Bowl, which isn't my experience. It's a very solemn moment, and it's a very precarious moment in my mind for mankind, because it just brings back this sort of split, which is exaggerated in these sort of mindsets that are competing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is what we're talking about. What you talk about a lot in your different shows is all about how the paradigm is shifting from, celebrating when he wasn't a good guy. We know that, but celebrating his death is, in a way, counterintuitive to what we're working on.
And even the deeper cut, it's interesting. I'll give you a little background on me. One of the things you mentioned, I'm a life coach, and I am, and an author, and a radio show host, and other things as well. But one of the things I did is I taught for a couple years at a place called Homeboy-Industries, which is a gang recovery program. And,
I've heard of it.
It's an amazing place, actually.
Yeah.
It's founded by a guy named Father Greg Boyle, who's a Jesuit priest. And it's a remarkable place. I'll tell you something. These men and women, mainly men though, are, for me, they represent my shadow. They represent a part of me that I don't always want to look at. But what I really loved about doing the work there was I humanized this aspect of me that I personally want to throw out. Now, what I talk about when I talk about the collective is when we see something happening out there, let's say in the collective, it's often an exaggeration of what's going on for us. So with gang members in California now, we have a 3 strikes law, and in fact in Los Angeles we have a gang injunction, which is, it's unconstitutional, but it seems to have held up. And I'm not getting political, by the way. I'm just saying that it's very draconian. It allows the police way too much longitude and latitude. It sort of sets these guys up for failure. There's no way these recovering gang members can get out of prison and really stay out of prison. That's why the recidivism rate is so high, in part because they can't even go back to their neighborhoods. They can't go back to their parents, their family, because they could be picked up for being around, quote-unquote, known gang members. There's a quote from Mother Teresa, 2 quotes, actually, that I think are brilliant. When asked about dealing with and helping this society, many of whom are really outcasts. I mean, they're even called outcasts. That's the class they're in, right? And they're not always nice people. There's a part of their behavior sometimes that was really kind of rough. I mean, this is coming from the slums of Calcutta. And she was asked about like that piece of it, similar to what Father Greg Boyle does with these homeboys. These are not the best people often in the world. Best people is the wrong language even. What she said is, I know the Hitler in me, and that's why I can help them. And that's the most profound thing she said. Now, the other thing she said, which is really beautiful, she said, I see Jesus in all of his distressed disguises, which I think is really beautiful. Whether you're Christian or not is irrelevant. The idea that she sees their loving essence. She doesn't judge them on their externals. She sees past that. And that's the piece that I think is really important for all of us. So when something like this happens, I don't want to remove myself from the part of me that might be capable of the kind of behavior that Osama bin Laden did. In the same breath, I see the need to contain him, and I grieve the fact that, this events and atrocities occurred. It's the celebrating which then separates us from it. And from my perspective, one man's opinion, we need to move towards our shadow. We need to begin to embrace it, because all of the atrocities that we see in our reflected back to us as individuals in the collective experience are those pieces of us that we've disowned. Because when we as a society throw people away, going back to the homeboy analogy, and it's a piece of our own shadow, this thing that we can just lock it away and devalue it and pretend like it doesn't exist. And having worked there, these are human beings. And there's some really beautiful human beings that have really been caught in circumstances just denigrating and pushing away is really a reflection of our disowned self. That's one man's opinion.
I'm Jewish, and yesterday was Holocaust Day in Israel, so it's kind of very interesting to Israelis to see a big symbol of a mass murderer who was murdered, and what do you do with that? I mean, it's very personal, of course, every person to himself, and for me, I really connect with what you said, because I do understand that one of the most dangerous things about the Nazis is that we dehumanize them. So we actually let that happen.
Yeah.
If we look at them as demons, as not humans, then we can let that happen again and again and again. And if we start looking for their humanity, that's when it stops happening.
Well, this is it. I mean, this is the whole fractionalizing of the Middle East, and I won't get into politics. I have no interest in politics, by the way. I have zero interest in politics because it's so locked into a competitive, chauvinistic mindset of dominance and control. And I believe, and this is, of course, the great quote by Einstein, that we can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness that was created. That's the point, that it's not from a place of judgment that we're going to, you can't judge your way into loving someone, for example. You have to choose. I'm either going to love them or judge them. And it's interesting because even the word discipline, I'm a parent, but it comes from the word disciple, which means to teach. That's a very different intention than punishment. And if you ask me, it's all about intention. When we liberate ourselves is when we become in alignment with, again, these two sides of ourselves, the shadow side, the dark side, and the light side. We begin to integrate the dark side, the shadow side, and we hold it very close. We have a compassionate perspective towards that part of ourselves, but we lead with intention, because intention is everything. Intention directs experience. You can say out of your mouth that you're intending one thing, but if your energy is saying you're not, then, people know. So when we become in right alignment, a lot of these trailing bits, we have to pull them in. We really do. They get cleaned up, though, and our lives begin to work in a very different way. That again, is personal. But again, I only really talk, and this is, again, my coaching perspective, on the level of the individual. Because when we get political, when we start saying out there, when everyone agrees, it gets very, I don't know if you feel this way, but I immediately lose all my energy. Because it's impossible. I mean, I can't think like that, but I can be responsible for my own thoughts, my own actions, my own intentions. And that's how the world changes.
I do a lot of dialogue groups between Jews and Arabs, and one of the biggest conversation is an enemy, like the sentence is, an enemy is somebody you don't know his story yet.
That's right.
And once you actually sit down with anybody and you let them speak and you listen, and you're not there to change their mind or change their point of view, you're just there to listen. You get that their stories are exactly the same as yours.
That's so true. That's so true. And what you said before, in dehumanizing them, we create lots of conflict because what they are is they're other. They're not us. And the truth is exactly what you're saying. They are us. We just can't see it. And oftentimes it's this shadow side of ourselves that we're projecting onto them, and we're making them the bad guy because we don't want to own our stuff. We don't want to tell the truth about ourselves.
Yeah.
And the liberation, and this seems counterintuitive, but it's the God's honest truth. Our liberation occurs at the moment in time that we accept every aspect of ourselves, that we pull it in and we keep it close. Because the truth is, it's coming out anyhow. Everything gets expressed. You know, I'll take a moment and illustrate this for you, because I think I can illustrate this in a way that really helps for people who are watching. I'm very aware of the part of me that's insecure. I am very aware of the part of me that's scared. And what I have learned to do, and there's a sort of running experience in my life of trying to impress people or please people. This is this sort of shadow piece where it leaks out, right? It just leaks out that I'm insecure in this kind of, not so great way, right? So let me illustrate it. I have to have a sense of this little part inside of me that's desperate for you to want to like me, right? And what I say is this: if I need to hold that close, hold it really, really close so that I'm aware of it, and then again, I lead with intention. So my intention today, Maya, is to connect with you, right? And that's what I want to lead with. But I have to be aware of this little piece of me that wants you to like me. Here's what happens if I'm not aware of this. One level, I'm defensive, okay? So I'm saying, I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you like me. That's not what I'm saying on my mouth, but that's what the energy is.
That's the energy, yeah.
Right, or the opposite is, please like me, please like me, please like me. And so that's what I mean. If I don't own that piece of me that wants you to like me, it leaks out. So what I have to do is I have to, before I do any interview, before I do anything, I take a deep breath. And I'm with the vulnerable part of me. I'm with the insecure part of me. And I let that part of me know that I'm going to honor it today. But I lead with intention. And so my intention today is to connect with you. And then I listen in a different way. Then I'm interacting in a different way. Then I have a different quality. There's a different quality in my experience.
That is so beautiful, and it's so true. And one of the things I love, the expression of dancing with your shadows, it's a really healthy expression, because if you don't actually dance with them, if you don't let them talk to you, and you're just pushing them down, they're going to erupt.
Oh, you
and
bet.
When they erupt, it's not happy. It's, it's that awful argument you're going to have with your loved one or spouse, that nasty remark you're going to have, or action that you might take. And it feels bad in the body. I mean, you can be spiritual and non-spiritual, but you can really be aware that when you're angry, you feel it in your body. When your shadows come up, or whatever you want to call them, feel it in your body.
And that dancing with your shadow is spiritual. I mean, that's the piece I want to say louder than anything, is that, a lot of us, and I'll be the first to raise my hand, found our way to spiritual principles from a paradigm of wanting to manipulate, control, win, succeed, be better, okay, but that has a little shadow component to it. And so there's a tendency, and again, I've done this in my life, towards sort of a spiritual arrogance or a spiritual bypass, where we're spiritual, and, that doesn't work so well. At the end of the day, those relationships that sort of test us, that's where the heavy lifting is. That's where the gooey good stuff is, because it's in healing. Again, this disowned aspects of myself and healing, let me be clear about what healing is. This is so simple, not easy, but it is so simple. It is about applying love. Compassion is an aspect of love, but applying love and compassion to whatever part inside of us is hurt, whatever part inside of us feels misunderstood. The moment we allow for that and go, wow, there's a part of me that feels insecure. There's a part of me that feels hurt right now. There's a part of me that's been triggered. I want to own that, because what you said is right. If I don't own it, it's gonna, it's gonna build like a, like a pressure cooker. The pressure's gonna build, because it takes a lot of pressure to push that stuff down. It takes a lot of energy. That's what a lot of my clients who come to me, it's interesting, because what's happening is, what I help them become aware of is where they're sort of spending their energy, where they're putting their focus, where these parts of them are leaking out. And it's interesting, because just this work of owning these aspects frees them up energetically, and it brings them into a state of coherence. This is a little heady, but I'm going to go ahead and jump off a cliff and say it. Coherence is a state in physics. In quantum physics, it's where waves are constructive. There's another version where waves are destructive. Basically, they're canceling each other out. And everything is energy from a quantum perspective. So the waves that are coherent are actually working optimally. And so a state of coherence happens in just a very simplistic sense, just from in a personal growth way, when we're not conflicted. When we're not conflicted, we become incredibly powerful. And most of what screws people up, most of what isn't working in their lives, has to do with something they don't want to look at that actually is creating a conflict for them. And at the point of recognizing these conflicting pieces and getting them aligned so where these waves can function together, all manner of miracle can occur. I mean, the universe, our universe, literally, rises up to meet us when we're not conflicted. Again, language-wise, this is what I'm working with anyhow. I don't measure it in quantum terms. I don't have, the devices and the electron microscopes and stuff to say, oh, that's what's happening at this subatomic level. I'm only talking sort of intuitively, and from the background I come from, which is spiritual psychology. I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology. So a little different. But it's interesting because it matches up on a lot of cool ways.
Yeah, the word convergence it comes out a lot in a lot of things in medium. There's a book called I think the Convergence Moment, that all the mediums are coming together, all the media aspects are coming together to tell the same story. You and I speaking is part of it. A lot of people are touching, they're saying, okay, let's talk about the bigger conversation. If you actually look at it in the form of quantum mechanics or physics, it actually looks like that. It looks, if you actually checked it on a map and see where all the points are meeting, you will see that.
Right.
And it's really amazing. I think it's a really great time to act, as I said before, and to create change in our lives. So for people watching it, how do they join this? How do they start? Like, do they look at?
They're doing it already.
They're doing it already. I know.
No, but this is really important. That it's not an efforting. It's actually not a doing. It's what we're starting to the new paradigm, in my opinion. And I'm writing a book with Barnett Bain, who of course is a fairly well-known film producer. He produced the movie What Dreams May Come, which won an Academy Award. He produced the movie version of Celestine Prophecy, other movies as well. Barnett and I are working on this book together. And here's the premise. We are caught in, and I mentioned this earlier, in a chauvinistic mindset, which is very command and control, very dominant, trying to manipulate and dominate everything. This is masculine energy gone awry. Masculine energy is a beautiful thing when it is balanced with feminine energy, and vice versa. And I'm talking energy. I'm not talking male and female. That's actually where most people go offline and get confused. Chauvinism is damaging to men and women equally. It castrates men and it disempowers women. So it's not the battle of the sexes is a battle. It's a war. It's the wrong energy. What we individually need to recognize within ourselves, again, the level of individual, is where we're imbalanced. So what feminine energy is it's the space within which imagination, desire, expectation, those fundamental capacities can be grown and fostered. It's the possibility. And the masculine energy, when these are working together, which is what they're meant to do, comes in and fills that space. It finds expression for those qualities. And that's a kind of coherence that will change the world. But it's at the level of the individual. We all personally have to kind of do this on our own. I have to personally do it on my own. And it allows for that feminine, that idealized feminine energy allows for unknown. It allows for possibilities. Again, it's this space. And many of us, and I again will be first to raise my hand, don't feel comfortable with empty space. We want to know. We want to figure it out. We want to do. And not much is going to get done on that level. It's just we've beat that one in the pavement. And I'm not saying it didn't get us far. I mean, we built empires and we've done amazing things from that mindset. But it's the law of diminishing returns. We're getting less and less for more and more effort. That's the classic political thing where we get in the political movement. And that sort of mindset where you mentioned earlier, where we're trying to convince people or we're trying to whatever, it's getting less and less payoff. And so we have to find a new paradigm. We have to. I personally have to. Again, it's individual. The collective doesn't matter. We only focus on ourselves, not in a self-centered or egocentric way, but in a very introspective and conscious way. And then we consciously, intentionally begin to craft from the place of this idealized feminine and the masculine in a very healthy way, coming in and finding expression for these qualities and this essence of who we are in the world. And everything opens up at that level.
Yeah, and everything is effortless on that level.
You're right. It's often considered a flow. And what flow is, again, we're going back to coherence. It's when these energies are in alignment, it's almost like we don't even realize that we've done anything. And we look out and go, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Flow moments are something we allow for. And here's where we trip. And again, first to raise my hand, I have those kind of perfect moments, those sort of, I don't know, epiphany moments or whatever they are. Again, flow, fine. Yeah. And what I want, this part of my brain, which is conditioned from this chauvinistic mindset, immediately wants to come in and try to capture it in the bottle, wants to figure out what to do to get to that state. And that's the oxymoron. That's the paradox, is that it's not doing. It's really the space. It's allowing the space. So even a conversation like we're having today, to the degree that we didn't know what we were going to talk about, and you and I kind of didn't know. We kind of left it that way. I imagined some stuff out, but we didn't define it. In that space in between us, you and I can meet. That's a very feminine principle. That allowing for that there's a space in between us, and this allowing for space. So it's the allowing. It's the discovery. That's the magic. And you can't put it in a bottle. I'm sorry. I'd love to say, here's 7 steps to being in the flow all the time. And I mean, I'm not demeaning the books that have been written. You and I both know you can't will it. It's willing, not will. Yeah. It's willing. I'm willing to see your humanity. I'm willing to explore something. I'm willing to.
Yeah, it's surrendering. And the thing that Deepak Chopra said, we're not human doing, we're human being. And it's the being of it versus the doing of it.
That is the hardest one. And again, first to raise my hand, that is the hardest thing. It is so hard because I have such a propensity based on my conditioning to run in and try to put it in the bottle, try to capture it in the box. This, I call it the construct. And the construct is this defined self. And we're bumping up against it all the time. I mean, it's limited. And so we're always bumping up against our limitations. There's sort of glass walls. And, the whole premise of the show that I do with Barnett, it's called Cutting Edge Consciousness, is to begin to dwell more and more on the edge, to begin to become more comfortable with the discomfort, to allow for a certain amount of discomfort. Because growth happens when there's some level of friction. There's a wonderful Rumi quote that if you're irritated by every rub, how will you be polished?
I love it.
Is it true?
That's so true. I love Rumi.
We have to allow for a certain amount of unknown. We have to allow for a certain amount of mystery. We have to create more space. And so what we offer is, and this actually comes from that poem, I'm going to mess this one up too, Come to the Edge. That one, Come to the Edge. They said, no, but we're scared, and come to the edge. And they maybe said, no, I'm scared, and then come to the edge, and they came to the edge, and then the sort of, they were pushed and they flew. And that's what we invite people to do, is come to the edge of your own consciousness. Come to the place where you bump up against your own resistance and dwell there for a minute, just a minute longer than you have in the past.
Yeah.
And we arrive at this moment where we're like, oh, okay. And what happens is all manner of possibility opens up when we actually begin to work with those parts of us that are scared, overwhelmed, whatever. Then we can begin to imagine in a way that it's not imagine in the way most of us call imagination, where we're just recycling other people's ideas. You know, I'm saying really imagining, extending beyond what we have. We've defined our lives, that sort of construct that we live in.
That is really great. That is really, really beautiful. And I want to thank you for being, for also doing, because you're doing a lot, but you're creating the construct for people to be, and that is a differentiation, because we need construct. That's how we can create, but you know, it's that empty field that Rumi talks about. You know,
Out there,
beyond everything.
Yeah,
meet me there, and that's such a great. I love that metaphor, because it's where the most beautiful things can be created and where imagination can flow.
And the word field, I don't know if, I think people mostly, when they imagine that, they imagine a real field. But again, going back to quantum principles, there's a field that we can all meet in. It's there. It's our birthright. It's available at all times. We just don't know how to source it. And I don't necessarily know how to source it. I mean, I have those moments where, oh, there it is, you know. But again, intention really helps us. And again, the intention to connect, the intention to be sincere, to be honest, to show up, to allow. All those things are really beautiful things for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you, Freeman, so much for your time today.
Bless you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I will have you again here so we can have this connection and create this field together.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you. And this was Maya from the Worldwide Good News.